Let me ask you something tangible, and I want you to think about this. How many of your current struggles are genuinely coming from what's happening in your life? And how many are coming from the story you keep telling yourself about what's happening? Because if you've ever felt stuck, anxious, maybe overthinking, second guessing yourself, or bracing for the other shoe to drop, even when things are technically acceptable, this episode is for you. Here's the truth most of us were never taught. Your mindset isn't just your thoughts. It's the narrative lens through which you see yourself, your relationships, and your future. And when that lens is shaped by fear, old conditioning, inherited beliefs, or past heartbreak, you can end up living like a worrier, constantly scanning for problems, even when you're fully capable of being a warrior who trusts themselves to handle whatever comes. Today's episode isn't about pretending everything is positive or gaslighting yourself into optimism. It's about identifying the subconscious stories running the show in your head. The quiet ones, the automatic ones, the ones that sound like, oh, that's just who I am, or this always happens to me, or I should be further along in my life by now, or I don't want to get my hopes up because I'll just be disappointed. Because those stories don't just affect how you think, they affect how you show up, what you tolerate, the decisions you make, and the life that you believe is available to you. In this episode, we're discussing mindset shifts, limiting beliefs, mental blocks, and most importantly, self-leadership. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why you worry, you'll know how to rewrite the story, and reclaim your power. You will start leading yourself from a place of trust instead of fear, because when you change the story you live by, you don't just change your mindset, you change your outcomes. Stick around. This is an episode that hits. Welcome to Signals and Standards with Suzie, where we decode mixed messages, elevate your standards, and deliver practical insights that you can act on. I'm your empowerment coach, Suzie, here to guide you from confusion to clarity, helping you reclaim your power and create the relationships and life you deserve. Here's something I've seen over and over again in coaching sessions and relationships, and honestly, in my own life. Most people think they're reacting to reality, but really they're not. They're responding to an interpretation of an event or a situation. Two people can experience the same event, an accident, a breakup, a moment of silence, a professional setback, a missed opportunity, and walk away with entirely different emotional outcomes. One spirals into self-doubt, the other recalibrates and moves forward. Why? Because the event itself isn't what shapes us, but the story we attach to that event does. Psychology refers to this as narrative psychology, the understanding that we don't just experience life, we make it into a story. We assign meaning, identity, and prediction to what happens, often so quickly and automatically that we don't even realize we're doing it. And once a story feels familiar and we get comfortable with it, it starts to feel true, doesn't it? Even when it really isn't. Think of your mind like a courtroom that's always in session, whether you're aware of it or not. Your subconscious beliefs act as the attorney, passionately arguing their case. Your past experiences are entered as evidence, selectively, of course. And your identity becomes the verdict that gets handed down again and again. If your internal lawyer keeps pressing arguments like, I'm not enough, or people always leave, or I mess things up, or I have to prove my worth to be chosen, then regardless of how capable, intelligent, emotionally aware, or accomplished you actually are, you'll keep sentencing yourself to self-doubt. And what's wild is that many of these beliefs were never consciously chosen. In fact, Psychological research shows that limiting beliefs are often unexamined assumptions, not facts. They're shaped by family dynamics, absorbed through early experiences, reinforced by past relationships, and repeated in emotional memory. And once a belief goes unquestioned, it becomes invisible. That's the real danger right there. You can't challenge a belief you don't realize you're living by. However, you keep organizing your life around it, don't you? This is where identity work becomes so powerful. One study I read found that when people begin to see themselves as the main character in their own lives, not in an ego-driven way, but in a self-leadership way, their psychological well-being improves and confidence increases. Resilience then strengthens. Emotional regulation becomes steadier. Why? Because main characters don't just react to the plot. They make intentional choices inside it. When you live in the background character energy, life feels like something that keeps happening to you, not something that you're controlling. So you wait, you brace, you adapt, you tolerate. But when you step into main character energy, you recognize that while you may not control every circumstance, you do control your response, your boundaries, and the meaning you assign. Worry energy says something bad might happen, so I need to stay on guard. Worrier energy says if something challenging happens, I trust myself to handle it. That's not toxic positivity. That's self-trust. And self-trust grows when you stop telling yourself you're fragile, broken, or not enough, and start telling yourself that you're capable and worthy. This is where mental reframing comes in. And this isn't motivational fluff. This is backed by cognitive psychology. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, shows us that distorted thinking patterns keep us stuck in emotional loops. Patterns like attempting to mind read someone, catastrophizing a situation, or having an all or nothing thinking. These don't show up because something is wrong with you. They show up because your brain learned them as protection at some point. For example, if someone doesn't text you back, your mental chain of reaction may go like this. They're pulling away, to I'm being rejected, to I'm unlovable. That's not intuition. That's a mental shortcut rooted in past wounds and reinforced over time. Psychology explains that cognitive restructuring isn't about lying to yourself or forcing positive thoughts. It's about challenging the accuracy and usefulness of that thought. Asking questions like, what else could be true? Where did this belief come from? Or is this thought protecting me or limiting me? Create space between stimulus and story, and in that space, choice becomes possible. In the past, I've spoken a lot about emotional responsibility, not as self-blame, but as self-leadership. Emotional responsibility means recognizing that while you didn't choose the conditioning you grew up with, you do get to decide whether you continue living by it. When you take responsibility for your inner narrative, you stop outsourcing your power to circumstances, people, or outcomes. You stop waiting for external reassurance to feel safe inside yourself. That's the pivot point, the exact moment where worrier energy starts transforming into warrior energy. Not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you become stronger, more precise, and more grounded in who you are. And that, my friends, is the fundamental shift right there. You don't stop worrying because nothing ever goes wrong. You stop worrying because you trust the person you are when things do. So let's put this into action with today's coaching moment, inspired by the questions you've been sending me, the conversations happening behind the scenes, and what I hear again and again in real coaching sessions. And just a reminder, If something in this episode sparks a question for you, or if there's something on your mind, you can always reach out to me at powercoachsuzie.com. I read them, I reflect on them, and many of these episodes are born directly from what you share. Today's question is this: why do I always expect things to go wrong even when they're going well? Now, if you felt that this question was really relatable, if you felt the question in your body as much as your mind, you're really not alone. I hear this one constantly, and I've been there before. I want to say this clearly before we go any further. There's nothing wrong with you for thinking this way. This pattern isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system strategy, a coping mechanism, if you will. Here's the truth most people have never been taught. Your nervous system doesn't crave happiness. It craves familiarity. It wants what it knows in order to survive. If chaos, emotional inconsistency, unpredictability maybe, or disappointment were part of your early environment, whether in relationships, family dynamics, past experiences, your system learned to stay alert. Calm didn't feel safe. Calm felt suspicious. Peace felt like the quiet before the storm. You're always waiting for the next disaster. Sound familiar? I worked with a client who kept sabotaging healthy relationships in subtle ways, picking fights, pulling back emotionally, overanalyzing small things, rejecting people who did feel safe. On the surface, it appeared to be a commitment issue. But when we slowed it down, we uncovered this belief running quietly behind everything. If things feel too easy, something bad is coming. For them, peace felt boring and boredom felt unsafe. Once we named the belief, if I relax, I'll get hurt, everything shifted. Not overnight, but intentionally. Awareness changed the pattern. Compassion replaced the self-judgment. She also met with a therapist to really get to the core of why she felt this way. Here's the part I want you to really hear. You can do all this too. It's in your power to do. All right, here's how to do it. The first step is simply noticing your pattern without shaming yourself. The next time you feel the urge to pick a fight, emotionally withdraw, or start overanalyzing something that was fine 5 minutes ago, pause and ask, what am I actually reacting to right now? The moment or an old belief? That question alone interrupts the automatic cycle. The second step is to name the belief underlying the behavior, not the behavior itself. The story that's behind it. Is it, if I relax, I'll get hurt? Or if I don't stay alert, I'll be blindsided? Peace never lasts? Once a belief is named, it loses its power to run in the background. The third step is choosing a grounded replacement thought. Not a fake positive, but a believable one. Something like, I'm allowed to enjoy calm without waiting for it to disappear. Or, I trust myself to respond if something changes. This isn't about convincing yourself that nothing will ever go wrong. It's about reminding your nervous system that you can handle it if it does. And finally, practice staying present when things feel good. That's the most challenging part for many people. When calm shows up, don't rush to fill it with worry. Take one deep breath and say to yourself, nothing is wrong right now. Let your body experience safety without rushing past it. That's how you retrain your system, not through force, through repetition and permission. That's how peace stops feeling scary and starts feeling deserved. I want to be transparent here. I had to do this work myself as well. There's a season in my life where I kept telling myself, I have to stay alert or I'll miss the red flags. On the surface, that sounds responsible. It even sounds wise. But what it actually did was keep me anxious, guarded, and emotionally disconnected. I wasn't present. I wasn't scanning. I wasn't enjoying the connections I was making. I was monitoring them. And that constant vigilance didn't protect me. It exhausted me. Everything changed when I reframed that story to something much more grounded and self-led. I said, I trust myself to respond if something doesn't align. Notice the difference. That shift didn't make me careless or naive. It made me calm. It anchored me in self-trust rather than hypervigilance. That right there is warrior energy. Not bracing for impact, but trusting your ability to meet whatever comes. So here's what I want you to take from this. You are not your thoughts. You're not your past stories. You're not the voice that learned fear before it learned confidence. You are the narrator of your life. And narrators can pause. They can question. They can rewrite. Moving from worrier to warrior isn't about becoming fearless or pretending nothing ever goes wrong. It's about becoming self-led, trusting yourself enough to stop living in anticipation of pain and start living with alignment with who you are now. And that, my friends, is where real empowerment begins. Let's tie this all together with an affirmation you can take with you right now. Take a deep breath, feel your body, and repeat with me. I trust my inner leadership. I trust my inner leadership. I trust my inner leadership. Here's why this works. When you speak this out loud, you're signaling to your nervous system that it's safe to relax, that you don't have to be on constant alert. Trust literally changes how your body and your mind respond to uncertainty. Saying it repeatedly also reinforces your identity as someone who makes grounded decisions rather than reacting automatically. Identity, the way you see yourself, is where lasting mindset change begins. You don't have to control every outcome or eliminate all risk. What matters is that you remember you can handle whatever comes. Each repetition of this affirmation is a little reminder that your inner voice is a guide you can rely on, not a critic you have to fear. And that is where real power is. I trust my inner leadership. So here's the big takeaway. I want you to walk away with this today. You are not your thoughts, your past stories, or the automatic beliefs that have been running in the background for years. You are the narrator of your own life, and narrators can pause, question, and rewrite the story. Start by noticing the patterns that keep you anxious or even make you overthink, the subtle ways you might pull back, overanalyze, or brace for something to go wrong. Name the belief underneath the behavior, and then choose grounded, believable thoughts to replace it. Ask yourself, is this thought protecting me or is it limiting me? Pause when things feel good. Breathe and let your nervous system experience calm without rushing past it. Your gut feelings are still valid, but learn to distinguish between them and your nervous energy. That's how you retrain your mind and shift from worrier energy to warrior energy. And here's one practical tool to anchor it all. Repeat the affirmation with intention. I trust my inner leadership. And really feel it in your body. Every time you do, you're signaling to yourself that calm is safe, that you are capable of handling challenges, and that your identity is rooted in self-leadership and not fear. You don't have to control every outcome. You have to trust yourself to respond with clarity when things happen. When you practice this consistently, awareness becomes action. This action then becomes confidence. And this confidence then becomes the natural state of your life. That's the shift from worrier to warrior. Not fearless, but fully self-led, fully empowered, and entirely in charge of your story. Thank you for being here and stepping into your power with me today. I look forward to seeing you next week for another empowering conversation. You can catch these episodes and shorter Power Shop bonuses anytime on my podcast, Signals and Standards with Suzie, available on all your favorite listening platforms. Bye for now. For daily inspiration and practical advice, find me on social media at Power Coach Suzie. Got questions or ideas for the show? Head to powercoachsuzie.com where you can connect with me, explore the blog, or learn more about what I do. This is Suzie signing off. Until next time, keep reading the signals and never, ever lower your standards.